All right, so we're working a bit on some muscle memory of experiences we've had with chest openers in the beginning. So what I want you to set up is that you have a bolster in the center, a block right in front of the bolster, and then sit up onto the block. And as you bring your seat onto that block, you're near a wall, okay? Have your extra block. If you have a little squishy ball, keep that nearby. Your sand will go on you in the first pose, so that's right there. 2 blankets at the back, a belt. This needs to be unbuckled. And then if you have a chair behind your mat, you know, anywhere distance-wise that you could somehow easily get a hold of it when it's time to use the chair. Okay, so we begin warming up our ribs and chest. So I want you to lie back on your block that's kind of right underneath your rear, and your bolster's under the waist, and slide into the ribs. And then as I reach my feet to the wall, you might have to sort out your distancing from the wall. It might take you a few moments to kind of move the props around. I certainly want you to have your blanket under your head, 1 to 2 blankets in a quarter fold. And then if you can place the sand on the front of the thighs, the kind of the thigh lids, so it sorts out between the thigh matter and the hip. That's kind of a thigh lid. And then when you balance the musculature in your back, I think it takes some time to explore the reaction of your back warming up, which might feel like there's a little bit of tension to begin. So use a belt, take a hold of this belt, and as you stretch it out, you'll bring your belt behind you. And I like to kind of sort out my shoulders on the blankets a bit. And, you know, as you have memory of these shapes, you hopefully become conscious of what is settling for you, what's relaxing for you. So what comes to feeling for me right now is that I'm not sure if I want this much blanket height. So I'll take some time with the 2, and then I might go back to 1. But as I grasp the belt, you want to feel a width with the belt that corresponds with the circulation of your breathing. So if it's possible to close your eyes and turn the focus inwards to the reality of the support of your body on the props and the flow of the breath. And any fidgeting you need to do is always welcome, even more so in your home practice, because you're welcome to do that. You're muted and so forth, so you'll feel a little bit more at home. But as you hold onto the belt, feel the difference between maintaining the spacing of the belt, meaning you're not sliding your hands farther out, but kind of pulling it apart. And since you don't get the pleasure of moving your hands farther out on the belt to feel like the essential pulling, you're working with the muscles responding, the resistance in eventually it's actually the spine, but right now you probably feel it with the ribs, the arms, maybe not with the breath quite yet. So as you pull on the belt, keep the action of pulling it apart. Inhale, ribs expand. And exhale, ribs release back down. You compliment yourself internally on designing a shape that's complete. I think that would be an unusual thing for me to do in my mind when I'm practicing, is to compliment myself. But, you know, think of having that focus of, this feels pretty solid. and stable. Not that complimenting yourself is going to create more density or bone strength, right? That's probably not how it ends up, but feel that you push into the wall with your feet. You've got to push, that's the resistance part of the shape, and the pulling, right? Those are the two places of resistance. Okay, now release the grip and let the arms relax open. This might be where you go, I don't know about the two blankets. You know, your neck is already capable of moving back. So if you're comfortable without that one on top, that extra blanket, just shift it off to the side. Be sure it's not underneath the chair though. So as I move down to one now, you could stay with two. There's no fact that we all need to have one blanket. So find what works for your neck, one or two. And then I slide the sand away and slide the feet in, both kind of at the same time, and then move the feet together, the knees apart. So that would mean you move into cobbler's pose. Now, creating this shape for the hip is that there's a foot pressure, right? You want the feet to have some dose of pressure. And so you're going to basically prescribe that intensity, that measurement. But if your knees try to kind of flick up, lift up, then that gives you a sign that, well, I'm too close to the groins with the feet. So you might slide your feet a little farther down, but be careful because that you'll have a perceived response in your hips. So just notice, do I bring them close in? Do I slide them a little farther away? And then feel where you can maintain it for a good half minute or so. Just one range with the thighs, with the feet together, the knees apart. Good. And then when you notice how the shoulders center back, how the back of the waist might tilt down towards the legs, might tilt back. I want you to let the back of the waist feel like it's moving back into your bolster, like you're pushing a little more towards the top of your mat, towards the upper spine versus down to the feet. Okay, now bring the knees to point up and slide the feet back towards the bolster. And then feel the bottoms of the feet just press into the ground. This might feel like nice for the back, especially after we kind of move the knees outwards and have the legs straight. So I want you to bring your right knee, just lift the foot up and move the knee towards the waist and keep the curling pattern of the leg. So you're not trying to kick the foot up, but keep that nice fold of the leg. The left knee has to try to stay in track. The tendency is the knee kind of swerves out on the left leg. So it is quite the focus to keep that as if you were kind of in a case, right? There's like a box around your hips. You don't want the knee to move out of that. And then change, right? Foot down, left foot up, move the leg in. You still have the block under you. You still have your bolster, of course. But get a feel of how you can kind of pull that in. Don't overdo it, meaning that you don't want to grab your knee and pull. That's the typical reaction is, I'm going to move it in further, but not helpful. And then change sides. So we alternate knee to chest or to waist, however that reaction is for your range of motion. But take it alternating patterns and just be a little curious for a few moments on this. So meaning some of us will move the leg a little closer, some might try to kick the foot up a little bit, but tap into the awareness of your back muscles. Maybe close your eyes for the next few moments when we alternate knee to chest and just kind of feel what it is like if you move the knee in and maybe the leg kicks up a little bit. You just kind of feel, does that feel better in your back or does it respond different in your stomach muscles? So just imagine this loop of circulation in your back to the pelvis and then towards the hamstrings. That's where we're heading. So last time, whatever side you're on is the last side. And then as you lower that foot down, we're going to move one of the blankets off. So we're all down to one under our head. So be sure of that. But if you only have one, you don't want to get rid of it. And then reach for the sides of the bolster. Now I know most of us have you have that little handle on the side, that little piece of fabric you can reach around. So as you walk your feet closer towards your bolster, lift up your hips and then push that bolster down just a tiny bit, it's inches. So now if you can feel where the bolster is, it's across the back of your pelvis, like it's a big belt. It's not imaginary Velcro. And then lower down the pelvis onto the bolster. Okay, now before you kick your feet up, just kind of test. You might reach down to where your hip is, and then notice, are you right at the edge of that bolster with your rear? So it's right, it almost feels like it's a tiny bit over, but you're right on it. And then lift one foot at a time up. Make things real kind of delicate for your balance because it's your back you're working with, and you want to feel better after the class, or at least good, that you didn't strain something. So if this feels like it's, not in the exact right space, you want higher, lower, kind of play with it. Maybe move a little bit higher, tiny bit, and then lift up the feet. And this is where we get to figure out where our spacing is. So get a ball or block between the knees. And then as you place it between them, you'll stretch your elbows out. If you got stuff in your way, just shift it enough so you can keep your elbows wide. And then move the knees side to side. So there's a circulation balance in the hips. And so go for a little bit more of a free form pattern here, going side to side. And feel how the back waist is moving to the side, right? See that if your knees go over to the side, that it peels that parts of your body off of the bolster. And you're still certainly on it. But you can feel how that area peels up, and I would encourage you to let it kind of peel up and then feel the arm that is on that side that's peeling up open. And as the spine starts to get a nice release, not just hip, but spine. Let's take this for a few more cycles. If you'd like to bring your knees towards your arm, like up towards where the arm is, or maybe that means closer towards your shoulder, you can play with that in a very not mindful, but muscle-full way, because you have to kind of keep a hold of that ball, like squeeze into it, and then move the knees towards your shoulder. But you want to have the body still tilting the knees over. You lean first with the legs and then move them towards the shoulder. Okay, take a few more. This feels kind of nice. It's something that we've often done without the bolster under our back as well. You probably have done plenty of these motions before to loosen up your back, but this gives a little bit of freedom into the ribs. Okay, now come back and center and just adjust so that you feel like the space of your neck is comfortable. For me, I like to move my blanket a little farther back so it's not at all under my neck. That way my neck can lengthen. All right, so I want you to feel what it's like when you lift your feet up. They're already off the ground, I know, but lift them a little higher. And so it's a right angle. So if you look towards towards the ball and then to the feet, you can see them, right? They're not so high up, but they're right forward of the knees. And then squeeze inwards. And you don't have to be using your eyes the whole time. You can kind of see and then close them as often as you like to relax your eyes. But squeeze the ball. That doesn't have anything to do with your eyes. We'll find all the things we don't need to use the eyes for today. That's what we'll do. So squeezing until the muscles in the legs are awake. I want you to keep squeezing. Now, if you're all squozed out, can't do any more squeezing, then bring the knees to the chest, right? Your squeezing changes a little bit, and then move the ball away. And then I want you to get your sandbag, okay? And let's place the sand on the front of the left thigh. That means that left leg has to stretch down, I'm assuming. And if you have the foot touching the wall, well, so be it. I didn't get my foot to be exactly to the wall. I kind of wish it was, but I'm not going to reset my props, and it's fine. So the reason the wall would be nice is that it will help your foot from turning out. It's a very distinct advantage. So if you want to fuss around and make that happen, go for it. But get a belt and take it so that your belt is under your right foot. That means you got to kick your leg up. Maybe this will work out. Yeah, actually my foot will eventually make the wall. Yeah, so what's fun about this is when you do have a wall nearby and you work on the belt and the sand and all that, you kind of feel where the circulation dynamic changes when you have the weight and the belt. Because you might feel like you get a little longer on the bottom leg. So I think, I don't know, I'm not going to buckle up to them, so I'm just going to let it be hamstring oriented. So if you want to do a brain float, you're welcome to. You have muscle memory, I know. If you want to buckle up and make the loop around the back of your head, go for it. I'm going to stay with the kind of a standard hamstring flow. So as I pull the belt towards my center, I want to feel the back of the leg lengthen like it's lifting towards the heel. Okay, and then I pull on the belt, and maybe I pull farther back and move the leg towards me. But there's another dynamic where you're flexing your foot and you're feeling the stretch into your calf. They're like different, right? One is pulling, one is moving the foot to a high degree of flexion. So feel when you're pulling and let your eyes relax. Noticing what you do with relaxing your eyes. And then really focusing maybe on the body mechanics. Of course, the benefit if you have brain float is you don't have to hold anything. You just let your head relax back into the belt. Now, if you have your foot touching the wall, then you might feel some response in the back. So I would be a little cautious of reinforcing that. See what works for you. If that's helpful, use the touch at the wall with the foot. And one thing is true is the sand on the left leg actually creates a little more stretch in your right hamstring. Right, one side's pushing down, one side's being pulled. Okay, now let's slide the sand off and let's bend the left knee a little bit. You don't have to take a full bottom of the foot on the ground, but give a little bit of sensation of bending the left knee, and then hold onto the belt with the left hand and cross the right leg to the left. So if you have brain float, you take the belt off the back of your head because I don't think you want to cross the leg over with the belt behind your head. But as you cross the right leg to the left, now it's going directionally kind of anywhere left. It's going towards 9 o'clock. It's going a little downstream. You decide the angle, but feel where the sensation, I know you are sensation full right now. in that right leg, if it's at the top thigh matter, if it's kind of shifting around to the hip, kind of cycling into the glute. Okay, but instead of like all these, identifying with these parts, feel the waist kind of shift to the right and roll your head to the right. Breathing fully. And this might feel good to your hip, to your back. Just feel like it's doing some helpful releasing tension. Okay, now as you bend to the right knee and you bring that right foot back up, take the left foot up into the belt. Okay, push the feet out wide into the belt. So if your belt is buckled for whatever reason, unbuckle it. And as you push the feet out wide, noticing the feet moving away from you. Now the width is up to you, right? You might have it closer. You might be surprised at the stance, that it's fairly wide and you're comfortable with it in the legs. If they're shaking a lot, there's a lot of like trembling in the legs, bring them a little closer. And if that doesn't go away, then you might bend the knees, right? And that might help that trembling, that response in the hamstrings. Okay, but the idea here is being upside down, okay, versus how far you can stretch. The legs are lifted, right? The head is back. Head is not above like you normally live. The head is not on the top. Okay, slide the feet in. Now they're going together. So you have side by side feet. And as the feet push, it's more like, I think the intensity is my hands are pulling more than my feet are pushing, because they can only go so far up. Your hands can always pull farther. You can tighten and grip and make yourself more tense. But that's not our focus here. So, just get a feel of pulling, like a generic 65% pulling, like you're pulling a bit, but a lot of it you're just holding onto the belt and your feet are pushing the belt up. So it's a pulling energy. Now, when you slide the right foot out and lower the leg down and get the sand, it's on your left side, I assume, okay, unless you already set it up. But as you slide your sandbag, you have to kind of let go of your belt though for a few moments to get it all oriented. My sand is on my right thigh. And as I get a hold of my belt, now my fingers are getting tired. You might decide, what is another thing you could do with the belt if your hands do get tired and you still want to do this kind of stretch? You could take your belt, you can make a little loop. You don't have to do that big, but you probably need some amount of space and you get your arms in it, right? So you have that loop and you could put your palms together and bring the belt so it's around the wrist area, right? That's all. And you could so it's like prayer position with the hands. And you could use it that way so you're not gripping with your fingers. You never know when you might have a time when your hands hurt when you do that. It's just too much in the fingers. So this is an option, and you could just pull the hands down towards the heart. So you can make the belt wider, the loop. Now I find this to be kind of interesting, doing the movement like this. It's the same thing in the leg, but it is a little different in the arms. Yeah, I can feel kind of my little bit of my arm strength, different than when you're yanking on the belt. So if you're back to this one, which is fine, all curious stuff. So pull And if the right foot doesn't touch the wall, it's okay. Things change on the second side. You kind of flow away from the wall a bit more. But when you pull, however you are with your arms, duo response, however they are holding on separately or together, see if you can maintain that connection of the lift of the foot. Like it's defying gravity, although you have it stuck in a belt. So levitating foot, pulling, muscle response in the left leg. You might even be lucky to feel the right thigh stretch. Okay. And as you maintain the focus, you're going to sneak into the next shape. So if you have the hands together, you're going to have to slip away from that shape. So what you'll do is you reach your right hand up for the belt and you'll slide the sand off. It just goes off on its own as the left leg crosses to the right. Now, if you have the brain flow on that side as well, you obviously take your belt off of the back of your head. And then when you cross the leg over, your right leg needs to have a little bend, the bottom leg. You cross it over. Head rolls maybe to the left, maybe center, maybe to the right. There's a lot of maybes, huh? A class with many maybes. All right, now when you cross that foot over, hopefully not touching into a wall so you have unlimited range. But when you do, you'll feel that the side muscles are screeching to a halt. You want to, pumping the leg is not a bad idea, but it's almost like bouncing into the, most of us don't like to bounce in a stretch. That's kind of a no-no. So feel where there's energy moving in your side of your leg into your hip and side. And you can always use your left hand to kind of touch to that upper leg bone, connecting to the hip bone, and just kind of persuade it to go to the right. I want you to go to the right. I don't want you to get caught up into the waist and the hip. That's the gentle reminder of movement. Breathe. It only helps. Take a few more moments before we shift. Okay. So this left side that you've been stretching through, we're going to let that side receive kind of the weight in a few moments. So bend through the left knee. You probably have to kind of catch the positional change by bending the knee joint. And then I would just slip the belt off of the foot. It's just kind of easier on unwinding from this one. And as you slide your right foot in and bring the left foot down, just let the knees go a little side to side. Take it pretty easy though, because your back is really stretched out here. So if you need to bring your knees up, your feet off the ground and go side to side, that's great too. So I want you to kind of feel what is the range in your hip here. If your feet are off the ground, your feet are together. If your feet are on the ground, they're apart. That's the difference for the waist stretch. Okay, we're going to kind of work a bit with this windshield wiper idea. I find my feet off the ground is better for my knee joint. And that's kind of the final straw usually, is if that feels yanked around, I don't want to go further. So let's go left, roll off of the bolster. And then we're going to start to use our props to set up for side sage. So what I want you to do is get your sand over next to if you're looking back at your bolster to the right, and you're going to use your chair a tiny bit here coming up. So this is what might be the best setup, is to kind of lean over your bolster, get your other blanket on top. I like to use one low blanket. So this is my kind of quarter fold. And then I take the top one and I fold it in half. And then I'm going to get my ball and have that for my right inner leg. Okay, so set up. So your chair then is the next piece. Now, it's probably okay right there. I have it somewhat close. I don't want it too close though. You just want to be able to reach to it. And you don't want it too close because you don't want to bump your head on it. So when you lean your left hip up to the bolster on the ground, you stretch the right thigh back and place the ball on the inside of the right leg. Could be knee, it could be inner thigh. I think that's about your range. And then when you add your sand to the side, yeah. And I'm not even sure if this chair is in the right spot, but we'll find out, won't we? Okay, I think that's fine. So of course, you know what we've used before is the block overhead, but the chair makes it a little easier on your shoulder joint, on your neck, and it's just simpler experience that you have something just that high up. And so the line of energy extends from the waist into the, and the arm can be a little bit of a tense cycle of movement. So this type of reach with our arm is rare, right? During the day, it just hangs down by our side. So, you know, getting these ranges is good for the heart. It's good for the lungs. It's also, you know, as I mentioned early on, I'm thinking lately about using my ribs in these poses, thinking of the ribs as, you know, a steering wheel. So when I move that arm to reach, of course, it's limited steering now. Until I take a full twist, can I really use that steering wheel idea? But I'm just starting with that. So if your head is tilted back and that's not good for you today, you can turn your head and rest it, right? So you're a little bit more just onto the ear. And then you only get to hear out of your right ear. So taking a few breaths that are focused in the ribs. You're with or without sand. If the sand is just bothersome, you can let it go. Sometimes it is. Okay, but manage that focus on the movement in the rib cage. Okay, you can always move your sand across the hip, horizontal. You want to get a feel of the motion of the intercostals between the ribs. Expands. And the motion of the intercostals lifts the rib cage. Even if your right hand is kind of resting on the chair, if you're not sure about this chair idea, you can always let the arm be on the side. Not on the side of the chair, but on your side. Okay, so feeling where the weight is in your hip. Okay, so let your motion change for your response in your hips. So you're going to slide the sand away. And then simple, you're shifting down to your legs. So kind of get a feel of, okay, the weight into my legs. So I'm going to use my hands on the bolster to bring myself up. And then when I move the ball, you'll sit in front of the bolster, just regular, sitting in front of my bolster position, knees pointing up. But tilt your waist back onto the bolster, so your elbows are on it. Bring your feet, I would try to go as far apart as you can comfortably sit with your spine, right? So if I take them really far out, then my back has too much arch. So I have a spacing in my feet, and then the knees are going to go side to side, And I have my feet far away from my seat, so my feet are not pushed and scrunched up to my seat. They're downwards. And I guess you could slide them farther towards the wall. It's probably not that big of a deal. But I want you to feel like you're pushing into your glutes a little bit. So it's like a little bit of glute pressure, massaging pressure. So circulate. And so as you go side to side, you can let your elbows press more into the bolster. You probably have to be a little careful about your neck, so maybe close your eyes so you can send the focus into feeling versus, am I doing this right? Because it's right, you know, you're just swinging your knees side to side to fluctuate. And then, funny enough, right, your movement in your ribs is in the junction of the thoracic, the mid spine into the lumbar. That's like that junction space is where things kind of start to get a little twisty. Okay, so let's come to center and then go to the other side, Sage. So you're on the right hip, and it's the same directions as side one, but side B, we've got the ball, and then the arm between the bolster and blankets and the sand. Sometimes the simplicity is just what you need for having a good program to take care of yourself. So now as you go to the second side, you have the weight of your head into the blanket, and your left arm goes to the chair. If you don't want to use the chair, you do not have to, of course. It's completely an option. It could be a stool, you know, you might find different heights around the house of things you sit on. So that is something to look around for. So as you let the body elongate on the left side, the side waist lengthens. The ribs move with the breath. And that might be the one of a few things you come away with just today in the session of remembering it later is, okay, you know, how much air I get into my lungs is dependent on the movement of my ribs. So just feeling that with the breath. Letting the weight of your head relax. So finding the peacefulness of feeling a full stretch, like the range of motion in your side. There's weight bearing into the hip with the sand. Even if your sand, for example, is on you don't have to change anything right now, but just recognize you can change it. And the sand could be on the side, even if I'm like that, I still am having the weight bearing work is on my hip, because the bottom hip is getting all that pressure because the knee is bending. So of course that positions into the hip. So just kind of feel that. And this is something that we're going to kind of wind right into. We're doing a little math project here coming up. It's more of a human geometry project here. Okay, so get a feel where your weight is on the right leg. You're just resting into it. It's not like you have to muscle your way through these things. But part of the flexibility work is combining, you know, some muscle and then releasing it. That's the challenge, I think, with flexibility. So when you remove your hand from the chair or wherever it is, if it's on the side or relaxed on your bolster. Just remove the hand from that space to move your sand. And what I think we're going to do is we're going to maintain this right leg bending shape. So slide your sand away. You're going to be coming up to sit on the bolster in a moment. So stay attached. So roll to the right. Okay, so let's see. We're going to pull our chair a little closer. I'm not sure how close you're going to want your chair, to be honest. So just pull it in and then take a seat on the bolster. Cross that right leg. So this leg was already bending. Right? It was already bending up to the bolster. You just place it down. So it doesn't really change that form. But the left leg crosses over the right leg. Okay. Some of us, this is easy peasy. Some of us, it doesn't feel good. It's cranking on the knee joint and the back is feeling stiff. So if that is happening to you, I want you to use the block in front of your legs, just like so. So my block would be flat. And then I would put my foot on that block so my knee is out. Okay, that's if this doesn't work. So if the foot crossing over onto the ground doesn't feel right, meaning your back is aching, then you would put your foot on the block. And I don't think it would make the back ache, because it would open up the back. Okay, so get a sandbag, place it on the right thigh. Those of you that have the leg crossed over, you have to take the foot up on the ground or whatever, and then put your sand onto the right leg. I know. It's just a workout, moving these sandbags around. I suppose that's good for us. So your left knee points upwards a little bit out if your foot is on the block. And you're going to reach back to the chair. Okay, I really like using a chair for this one. However, you have to fuss around a bit. So you might as well reach back. Now, generically, it would be right arm presses into the left leg. Now, I'm holding it like this because some of you might have your hand holding your knee. Okay, some of you might have your elbow to the leg. So not that this is better, it's different. So my left hand is back. Now, what I like to do is to kind of hold this little side piece of the chair, because then the arm of it, because then I can, and not the leg of the chair, distinct. You want to be above the seat. And then I can try to get that rotation, right? Does that make sense? It's looking like it is, maybe. So when you get a hold of that, it's okay if your hand is on the seat, but get a feel for now how the right arm connects to the left leg. And then it's a real windy, this is the ribs, this is the steering wheel, huh? So press with the right arm, lift through the torso, coming up spine, right? So lift up the spine by moving the ribs to the left. That's a challenge. This is a never-ending challenging position. It will always be challenging, right? So I find this one the most interesting, working with someone who's almost 91, because the spine just really wants to drop and drop and drop. So keep working on it, even if it feels like it's futile, that you can get taller with it. Just keep working on the spine lifting. It might have a little inner drop, but keep working on lifting the chest. You can close your eyes, you can keep them open. You choose. The neck is the final piece, isn't it? So you might let your head just center on the spine top. I don't want you to do too much cranking in the neck. So find where it's comfortable. Maybe tilt your ear to your shoulder, but careful. Spine top. Okay. Breathing. And then release the hand on the chair. Slide the right arm from that left leg and come back forward. And then I want you to take your left foot onto a block. So even if you didn't have a block on the last pose, just put a flat block in front of your legs and put your left foot on top of it so the foot is turned out. I guess the foot's not turned out, but the foot relaxes open. So the left leg has a sandbag on the top, and you're going to lean forward. What I like to try for in the past is sometimes I'll get a hold of my chair seat, but then that doesn't feel good on my shoulders. So that some of those old school teachings, I think, are I don't know, are meant to be for a different time in life, right? They're like straining poses, but lean forward so you can feel into your left hip. This left leg should be high off the ground, right? The knee. So it's not being crunched. And tilt forward. Yeah, so the no-no on this one is to round the back. Okay, so you're not, and I don't want to demonstrate it because it'd be bad for my back. So I want you to focus on reaching forward with your chest. Now, if you got a big emblem on your chest, forward reach. Maybe let your eyes close for a few moments. So sometimes closing our eyes, we can sense inwards where we're holding on. Maybe it's even how I hold my head, maybe how my neck is reaching. And I can really focus into that left hip. Breathing slow. Effortless exhale. Pretend that it's an effortless exhale. Okay, now when you come back up, bring the soles of the feet to that block, taking the sand away for a moment, and then the feet are on the sides of the block. I know they're not going to be imprinted on the block, but see if you can pull the block, and be careful because I don't want you to pull something in your body, you know, like a back part. So what you'll do is you have the block, and my block is this wide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it so it's on its most narrow, because that's the kindest for my back and my leg stretch. And then just let the hands hold the knees and then pull the block in and lean forward. Okay, so my hands are onto the legs, and then this corresponds into my back. So there might feel like there's a little bit of flexion in your spine. Okay, so that's okay, but I want you to lean forward, but most importantly, don't force the knees down, right? So don't like try to push the knees to the ground. Just feel that your feet and the inside of the foot might slightly be open, or trying to push into the block. Okay, this is for some spine centering. It's not for, oh, let's get the knees to the ground and touch our nose to our toes. Nose, toes. Okay, come back up. It's pretty minor. Okay, so that left leg bends and lowers down. This is the two versions, isn't it? Sand on left thigh for some. I think sand on left thigh was for all on this one. Okay, block is in front for those that want to put their foot on the block and turn this way. Okay, and then those that want to put the foot on the other side, it's really up to your body mechanics, not necessarily your mind. You know, your body doesn't always agree with what you're thinking you're going to do. So when you turn to the right, this becomes more of a study as I mature, right? Okay, what turns is where the thoracic meets the lumbar. So I can kind of feel where my twister is in my spine, right? And most of us, we want that area to stay strong. I think all of us do. So when we reach our right hand back for the chair, be careful you're not like yanking yourself around. You first start with spine up, or just the awareness of my spine goes up. And then I turn to the right, and I bring that left arm to the right leg and rotate. So the difference when you study body mechanics for care of the spine as it ages is that we don't want to do a forward bend and then twist, right? That's a no-no. You have to kind of take those out of your repertoire of movement if you have bone loss. Those have to go scratched away completely, but you want to keep your spine up, of course, and then rotate so that you're hydrating, right, between the discs. So you want to keep that lubrication and space so that they don't wedge or get more compressed. So when you turn, are you breathing slowly? effortlessly, maybe for a second, you are an effortless breather. Yeah, I hope you feel this a little in your legs. So if my right knee points up, tries to, I have my left arm across. I feel it a little in my right hip. Okay, you might feel other parts of the leg too. Take a few more moments of slow rotation. And don't expect that you're going to keep turning around and around farther like an owl, right? You have a limited range that you're massaging into the back. Okay, now if that right knee is kind of pushing towards the arm, that's great. You want that resistance, so you're not trying to tighten it up, you're letting the leg push to the arm. And then as I take my right hand off the chair and come forward, I'm going to use a block under my right foot, so the knee points open. Take my left foot a little forward, my hand moves to my right thigh. I reset, because what happens, you know, just like when you sit in a chair, you sit in a car, this thing starts to round under into your seat. And then your back starts to compress. So we're up, and then our hands reach back to the bolster and we lean. Unless you have some superpower, then your hands can be on your chair and you're comfortable with that. Okay, so as we lower forward, we have our spine reaching out of the pelvis, our leaning potential into the right hip. Yeah, and at some point you might find that you want to go further, and you can if your back rounds. That's true. You can round your back and go farther forward. But we're not really working on that principle here. We're leaning forward with spine extension. Yeah, there might be some appearance of a slight rounding, but it's extending, so it's going the other direction, right? The curve of the spine. Breathing. Maybe not effortlessly on this one. Okay. Gotta watch my spine curve. It's tempting to round it forward. Okay, so when you get a feel here of that movement into the hip, we're going to really kind of reach out into the legs coming up here into our all fours shapes. So moving back up isn't dramatic, right? It's inches. But when you come up and you take that sand off of the right leg, what I want you to do is probably shake out the legs, just because that might be the best thing to go with, is to stretch them both out, maybe shake it out, but this might be a good leg shake out too. So what we'll do is we'll roll to one side and we'll come to our knees for a moment. And I think you should probably, oh boy, all these props. Move the bolster to the side. However, it appears is fine with me. Get a blanket under your knees. You won't be using a blanket very long, so however the fringes are, if you have them, just let them be. Hands stretch out and then reach forward. Now be careful of your chair. I don't want you to knock yourself out with hitting your chair with your head. So as long as it's far enough away, stretch the torso, upward dog, okay? And again, if you're scared of your chair too close to you, when you come back, you could push it a bit away, but we're gonna use it soon. So reach back from table to a heart opener where your head lowers almost to the ground, but your arms stay stretched forwards and out. Okay. Round your back a little bit so you're pushing the floor away, moving into cat. And then you have to be careful of that chair again. If it never hit you before, it probably won't now. And then stretch your waist forward and up. So there's an arch. Okay, really enjoy the arch. Probably it is feeling good in your back to do it, but it seems like it would be intense. Now, when you come back to table, bring your hands in so they're a little bit wider than under your shoulders. Your fingers span open, palms press. Round your back, chin to chest. Inhale, arch the spine. Exhale, round your back. Okay, so feel this is a typical cat-cow, but it's taught for really all all things, all issues, right? It's taught for working with the bones, but it is a flex spine here, as you can tell. The benefit of it, though, is your hands are pushing down. So when I round my back, I'm pushing into the ground and I'm stretching back from the tail. I'm creating space between the vertebrae and then stretching gently through my neck. Okay. Now, if you can't feel that spine movement and you feel like it's strangely pulling through the belly, but you're not sure if you should pull the belly in, try to let your abdomen relax. And let's do a couple more, just moving the spine and the hips. Okay. If the hips are a place you're not so familiar with moving in a cat-cow, this can be fun to just explore the movement of the hips. And this is where we're going to shift it up a little bit. So toes under. I know your wall could be a good influence and not a good influencer here. So lift up the knees, walk the heels down, whether they're a little bit up at the wall, the base where that might feel good. They can go all the way down sometimes, and stretch the weight of your hands, pushing the weight of your body, right? You're trying to stretch out through the chest. Okay, now scoot your feet a little forward. You got your blanket there. Walk your hands back towards your blanket. And then I'm going to encourage you to just bring your seat to the wall. So if you need to scoot a little farther forward with your feet, so you don't feel like you're going to take a somersault, just move them farther away. So if I feel pretty stiff in the hamstrings, the farther my feet are away, the better it will be. Just keep that in mind if you're wondering how far away to go with the feet. But as you let your head lower down, it doesn't take much to let the weight of your head lower and stretch your back. Now hold the elbows or let the arms dangle. If this is concerning for your blood pressure, it's just because it lowers quite dramatically compared to being the last position. You might need to put your hands onto something if that's happening. So you could touch the wall with your hands and still get the stretch, but it might be a little bit more balancing for you, for some of us with that transition in the pressure. So taking the hold of the elbows for some of us, switch the crossing of the arms. Take a few more breaths. Okay. And now when we round the back and we're going to let the arms relax, let go of the elbows, come up. Okay, use the wall to help you. But that's a supporter. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use our chair for a few poses. So you're going to move your blankets away. You probably have to just take a stroll over to your chair. And taking that chair so it's in the middle of your mat. And you want to bring your hands down. Now, if you have like a piece of a yoga mat on it, it might be better. But if not, you'll be fine. It's not going to be slippery practice poses. But I want you to just step the right foot under the chair. The left heel is at either the base of the wall on the floor, or it could be a little bit up. But you know, if your heel is up, if it's flexibility and that feels better, it will probably feel like it hyperextends this right leg a bit more. Because you can tell if I tilt my heel up, it puts shear force on the back of the right leg. So, you know, see what you can do to get the heel down, even if you have to step your feet a little bit farther apart in that. And as far as where my chair is, I'm going to try to push a little bit out so I get even more of an extension in my back. But I don't want to be crunched under and round it. So it's like the farther you get the chair on your mat, hopefully it doesn't tear your mat. Okay. All right, so I've got my feet in a little bit of a funky position. There's two different tracks. My right leg is straight. And enough space between my knee and my chair, I could bend it. And I want you to have that space so that you do bend the right knee. So if you push the chair away, so be it. Calf stretch on the left leg. And then extend the right leg. So alternate bend and extend, which means straight here. Inhale through that bend. and exhale, extending. Pretty simple. One more time, inhale, bending. Okay. Now bring the right hand to the sacrum, back behind you, and then straighten the right leg and turn the waist. So be careful, right? When you straighten, you're leaned forward. Now, again, this comes to that idea of what do I do when I go forward, bend, and twist? So I'm working the rotation from my mid spine. So your ribs as that steering wheel turn. Okay. So right hand could be on your back. I prefer it to be connected to me. I know this gesture of arm up looks like I'm doing more, but I like to keep this waist connection. Always looking on ways to feature core strengthening. Okay. Now, feel when the body rotates to the right towards the ceiling. And then maybe let your head turn so you're looking down to the chair. And you might look over to your left arm and make sure the inside of that left elbow is not turning towards the back, towards the wall. You have the inside of the left elbow turning towards the back of the chair. That's tricky, is to get your bicep and tricep. You don't think about your arm flexibility often, but it's an interesting connection through into the heart. So as far as you talk about the flows in the body. Okay, so let's bring the right hand down, and we're going to use the hands on the side of the seat of the chair. So as I stretch back, I want to make sure my chair is on my mat. So if your chair is not on your mat, you need to get on your mat so you don't slide away. Now step the right foot back and take just a reach with your hands on the seat and lower your head between your arms. Your distance from the wall is up to you. You might be touching it, you might be far away, but stretch out through the chest and probably your legs a little bit. Okay. Now come up with your head, hands hold the sides of the chair, reach the waist like you did in up dog earlier and stretch the hips down, lengthen the torso. Inhale. And then come back to center. Step the right foot back, the left foot under the chair seat. Remember, we want to have this kind of big step forward under the chair. Okay, so I have to keep in mind, I don't want my feet on the same track. Careful about that. That way I have a little more broad space in my back, a little more width. Bend the left knee. Straighten the left leg. Go one more side before we lower onto our back. So give it a few more energy cycles of breath. Bending the left knee. Now, if your back calf is tighter on the side, it might be very obvious when you try to bend your knee on this one. You might go, oh, it's not quite down. So what you could do is lift the heel up, but then notice it tends to, hyperextend. So I would just try to keep the heel down and do the best you can to stretch the calf. So let's take it so the knee bends, the left knee. We kind of hold that position with the knee joint and the back heel trying to stretch down. So remember, it's not just your calf that's stretching. If your wrist gets tired, you can lower your elbows down. But if your calf is stretching, it's also the bottom of your foot. And so this might be a time of year you're a little bit more in your feet without the firm, stiff shoes around them. The boxes we put our feet in are probably not as stiff this time of year. But so you're trying to get your foot flush to get a little bit more, flexible, and then it exchanges up. Or you could wear your toe socks. Okay. So feeling how that foot is reaching back and towards the heel. Foot fascia. All right, now hand down on the chair seat, left leg straight, left hand back to the sacrum and twist. Remember, I want to find length in my back before I twist. So rotate. Okay, remember this right arm might get a little bit, it might spindle and rotate in. Let's try to keep the inside of that inside elbow space turned forward. And just kind of play with it. Otherwise you can, not that you're going to break anything, but that's when this whole mobility kind of loosens up and it doesn't have much, tone in the flesh. So just notice any tone is good here. We can work through. So rotate to the left. I'm trying to keep my right heel down. It actually feels pretty good to get that deep stretch in my calf. Yeah, and you can turn your head to look to that chair. You can keep your head to the left, you choose. So feel what feels good for you with your neck. And now turn back to the chair. And then hands onto the chair, hands onto the side. Take a step forward with that right foot. And let's move our chair aside. Okay. And then make your way down to the floor. And I want you to take a blanket. I would just make it flat. Like you don't want too much bulk under your neck. And then turn to your bolster or towards your wall too. And put your bolster at the base. We're not going to do legs up quite yet. Give ourselves a few things. So this other blanket is kind of no need. You don't need your belt again. All these things can go away. But you do need a block set. Let's use blocks. So we're going to lower onto our back. And you'll bring your feet to the wall because that feels so good to do after all that work we did. So let your feet touch the wall. Your bolster's below. And, get a feel just with the elbows by your side. So you want to feel that they're close, but you don't want it uncomfortable on your neck. Because, if I jam them in, then it extends my neck, it's a little tight. So feel where your elbows are by your sides, kind of like robot arms here, feet pushing into the wall. And then let that push happen. Now, push happens when you let the spine stretch under like you're doing a bit of a pelvic tilt. So push happens in your feet when you do a little bit. My back is still on the ground though. Okay. Now push into your feet and get a feel. Can you lift your hips up? Just try it. Just lift the hips a little. Then lower your spine back down. Everything back down. And your feet to the bolster. Okay. So now give it a try. Lift your hips. Probably feels like a little better for your back to have the feet on the bolster. Stretch your arms overhead. If you need more blanket under your head, you can always fold it up higher. So don't take my idea that it has to work for you. Okay, lower the spine, arms go forward towards the wall and down. Okay, now what I want you to try is to push it down to your bolster with your feet, of course. Lift your hips up. And then lift your arms up so they're just hovering over the ground. So you have a little core strength here. Just let them hover. Your glutes, your buttock muscles, that all is probably contracting. So now when you lift your arms towards the ceiling, let your hips slowly lift higher and higher and higher. And then your arms go back over head. Let your elbows be heavy. Okay, lower the spine. Reach for a block. And another, okay, get both blocks, one on the left side, one on the right side of the hips. Okay, so you lift your hips up. Now I'm going to slide my blocks in so they're together under the back of my pelvis. They're side by side. They're touching like a uni block. And I just let my pelvis relax onto the blocks. Okay, so I'm not pushing down aggressively to get my hips to go up. I just let that area relax down. Okay, so what you might find when you slide your spine a little bit back is, okay, arms down by the sides, palms open towards the wall. Okay, what I like to do is to stretch my legs completely, so I like to lengthen my legs out on this one, and then spend the energy so it's a pretty tight fit with my feet pushing the wall and this front rim of the hip stretching open, the hip flexors. You might have to fuss around to get that. but the bolster is under my legs, right? So my knees and all that area is extending. Okay, let the shoulders rest back. Try to use the blocks under to support and lift you a little bit. Breathing. Now when your legs are extending, some of you might have them still bending. Let's take a motion where we slide the feet, bottoms of them onto the bolster. And then when the feet push, you're going to just lift a little bit, although a lot of muscular action has to happen to get the hips to go up. So it's quite a bit. So I activate and then I slide the blocks and then I lower my spine all the way. And I let the left leg cross over the right leg and the knees go towards the right. Now I probably need something over here under my knees, okay? So this is one version. I have a particular aversion of this version as time has gone on. So what you might do is what we usually do in here is to put the bolster to the right side and cross the leg over the bolster. I just like more height under my leg. The block just doesn't cut it for me. So that's an option, okay? If you have a ball, you can place it at the sacrum and then add a sandbag to the outer left leg. I would go for it. Just use your sand, enjoy your shape. The last few poses here. You've got a hip crossover here. We're going to do 2 complete crossovers, then a legs up the wall. Be good. Final spinal for us. So enjoy where the leg crosses. Now, if you're going to stay with the bolster next to the wall and cross over, that's fine. But once I found this one, I just didn't want to go back as much because some people still like that other version a lot. So you choose. But feel, and if you need your blanket higher, this is a pose where I like to have a little more blanket under my head. You know, go with what feels helpful. And as the spine crosses over, is that lower rib cage that combines into the lower thoracic that creates that twist. Yeah, rest the back of your head. Relax your breath. Slide the sand away in the ball and get ready for the second crossover. Not too much in between the two sides. So maybe you unwind through the spine on that side and then move the bolster. If you're going to use the bolster under your feet, then you don't need to change it. You would just cross the right leg over the left and let the knees go left. Otherwise, here you are, crossing your right leg to the left side. And let your spine feel like it has a little bit of a rolling action, like you're doing this extremely mild massage pattern into your back pelvis, but you are trying to rotate in the pelvis, okay? So again, using a ball and a sandbag option, but as the spine eases up, yeah, feel the right arm release open, relax your head to the right or right and center. And where the priority focus is the hip. So if you're doing all these other add-ons and the hip doesn't feel a lot of influence, then it's best to back off on the add-ons and just stay with the main course here. but focus on the hip and the ease of the low back. No extras. You know, where the back muscles are moving also allows you to kind of release the grip of the glute a little bit, the back of the pelvis, right down to the glutes, stretching them out. Breathing slow. You know, once we've had about 2 minutes on each side, what we'll do is when we shift our sand, I want you to keep it down towards the wall, and the ball goes away, and then you roll to your bolster. If your bolster's at the feet, you roll to the left side or the right side in that case, and you put your bolster at the base. Again, if it was at the wall, you don't have to move it. Okay, but for the rest of us, we had to move it. And then sit next to the wall, so your seat is right there. And when you take the back muscles to roll down, it's like the last pose you just did. It's actually the same for me, the same direction, because I'm on my left hip. When I swing the legs up the wall, you might roll to the other side. You might try to scoot yourself back into the middle of the bolster. It's okay. And if you decide the bolster is too much, you can use a blanket under your pelvis too. Some days it's too much. If this is all too much to get your legs up the wall, what I would recommend is to do bolster bench, where you put your 2 blocks at the base and your bolster on top, and then a blanket, and then you let your legs rest on the bolster bench. That's a good option. So choose one, only one main course for your pose, and take your sand either onto your bottoms of the feet, or those of us maybe with a bolster bench on shins. And then with the legs separating a little bit. Now you'll notice the only place that has easy separation is below the knees, right? So you can hold your sandbag. You have to have some separation. So, you know, get a feel of the calves stretching, the back of the knees open, and then the back of the pelvis pressing into the bolster. And then follow through with lowering the arms down to where they're comfortable. For some of us, it's going to be cactus, elbows bending out. For some, it'll be elbows down straight. But if you can go out with the elbows and get the spine to support at the top with a blanket under the head, and turn the focus deeply inward to the belly breath. Relaxing the face, the mouth, the jaw. And just gather your attention on the breath. And once you notice how breath dependent you are, then you can start to relax your focus from that specific point of reference and just be and relax. Hopefully the breath just starts to happen. But the depth of it is where you're using your focus, right? The inhale for 4 counts. The exhale for 5 to 6. So we are trying to let the exhale lengthen to relax our heart. And that's where, you know, practice comes in to define your focus for your body. Now, if you have sand on your feet, let your eyes be aware and bend your knees. And as the knees will move inwards, you can slide the sand away. And let the legs flow back up. And once they're up and relaxing the heels to the wall, now notice the spacing of the feet. What works better for you? Is it closest they can go? Or is it a little distance? Just letting the feet float up to flush out the legs so any of that fluid retention drains out. You know, feel how the foot condition is neutral, right? It's not pointed, it's not flexed, it's somewhere in between. Pelvis presses down to the bolster and knees bend. And then just simply roll to a side and let your hands actually help push you up. And bring your seat to your bolster. Of course, it was there all along, but come back to center and get a feel of, you know, how you arrive in this moment with your back touching the wall. The parts that touch might just be around the shoulder backing. But if that's the case, that's great. If you can get your spine to have a natural arch so it's not pressed and imprinted at the wall, there's the shoulders back. Okay, let the hands slide and unite in together towards the heart and breathing in. Exhale, bowing into the space behind your heart.